how much land has been destroyed from fracking. Our report found that infrastructure to support fracking has directly damaged 675,000 acres of land since 2005. That's an area about the size of Big Cypress National Preserve. Well pads, new access roads, pipelines, and other infrastructure built for fracking turned forests and rural landscapes into industrial zones. And as we have seen here today, the numbers show that fracking is a nightmare for our drinking water, for our climate, for our public health, and for our open lands. And that's why we are so thankful that St. Petersburg is leading the way to protect the health and environment and community by joining cities across the country to pass this ordinance. So now, here to wrap things up for us and tell us a little bit more is St. Petersburg City Council member Steve Cornell, who's going to tell us about the ordinance to ban fracking. Steve, Council member Cornell.
Thank you. I like to use the common sense analysis of things. I think that's a good way to do things. And let me just say that I think supporting fracking for energy is like investing really heavily in a better horse and buggy for transportation. We know the end result. We know it's not going to be positive, and we do not want it in St. Petersburg. I wish our state would make the same statement. I think they're not going to do that. And so we're going to act as a city and make sure that we protect your drinking water and we protect your health. Now let's think about this. One of the key features of our ordinance is that it bans not only fracking, but it bans the wastewater. Because surprisingly, in some places where they do fracking, the people don't want to store that water that's full of all those chemicals that they will not even tell us what they are. You know, and I'm going to challenge any legislator who will support fracking, support the wastewater pond in your neighborhood. And I imagine the support for fracking would drop very precipitously if that happened, if that was a requirement. I will tell you that as a city, I will encourage folks to look at ways they can reduce dependence on fossil fuels. I will say that I will personally take that challenge. I will personally pledge right here in public that I will start riding my bike to work as much as I can. Obviously, if it's pouring down rain, maybe not. And if my work schedule and city schedule permits, I will arrange that so I can ride my bike to work and reduce my dependence on fossil fuels. I think that's important. Again, think about it, it's drinking water. And not only drinking water, water in general in this area is so important. Obviously we need drinking water to live. How about the bay? Come on now, the idea we're gonna have retention ponds full of these chemicals and they're gonna stay there, that is just ridiculous. Not in Florida, not with our rain level events, not with our geology underneath it. That's just not going to happen. And that bothers me, and I will not tell anybody in my city that they have to live in a contaminated place. And I want to say thank you to Jennifer Rubiello, also thank you to my colleagues on council, Darden Rice, Carl Nurse, and all the city council. When the ordinance is ready, we're going to pass it, and we're going to pass it quickly. And I want you to know that there were probably 5 or 6 council members that would have been happy to bring this forward. We agree on this issue, and we agree because it's the right thing to do. Just think about it. If you think that you support fracking, then just filter through your mind, are you willing to have that stormwater retention pond, that fracking water retention pond next to your house? Think about that, because if it's really not dangerous, there's no problem with that, right? And I imagine that if you think of it that way, you're going to say no to fracking, and that's what the city of St. Petersburg is going to do. And hopefully Tallahassee will stop listening to people that have the most money and actually do something for our citizens and stand up and pass a statewide law that does exactly the same thing. Thank you very much for being here, and I'll stop.
Thank you, Councilmember Cornell. I want to wrap up and say thank you to Councilmember Cornell, Councilmember Rice, Councilmember Nurse, all of City Council, and the Mayor for moving forward with this ordinance. I also want to thank our speakers for being here today, as well as a couple groups I didn't mention before, but that are certainly playing a huge role in this, the Suncoast Sierra Club and the Florida Florida Sierra Club, as well as, again, Food and Water Watch here in Florida, Interfaith Power and Light, Awake Pinellas, and many more community members and leaders. We're excited that this ordinance is happening, and thank you all also for coming today. Thank you. And now I can open up for questions.
One question of one of the council members to answer. When could we see this ordinance be voted on, and how ultimately do you think this could prevent the state from moving forward with fracking and prevent them from fracking in the city limits if they would move forward with that, and you have an ordinance banning it?
Yes, it's coming to Public Services and Infrastructure Committee. It's already referred, and so I checked this week. Legal anticipates within 3 to 4 weeks the ordinance will be ready, and I would anticipate that it will pass very quickly as soon as it's ready. So probably I would anticipate sometime in June.
Okay, and how would it effectively prevent fracking in this area if the state moves forward with that?
The state has two options if they move forward. They have an option that allows cities to have their own ordinances and they do their statewide ordinance and grandfather those in, or they have an option to preempt us. And I think it would be very foolish. First of all, for the state to allow fracking would be foolish, and then I think it would also be foolish for them to preempt us. And if people think about that, we believe in home rule. We believe in government as close to people as possible. You can't get any closer than the city council, so we hope they leave us alone if they do that. They don't have to, but we hope that they will.
Steve is absolutely right. Also, a reminder of a success we celebrated a few months ago, that in Florida, over 80 cities and counties have passed resolutions, not necessarily ordinances, but resolutions opposed to fracking, and that was extremely influential in killing a vote in the Senate committee to stop fracking in Florida last year. But you better believe it, industry's not going to give up. They have some politicians bought and sold who have promised to bring it back, and that's why we're doing a resolution and doing everything in our power to stand up tall and fight it.
I have a question for Councilmember Cornell. Yesterday, Vice President Biden was talking about how the increased production of natural gas in the country has decreased the trade deficit, and it's also made us more energy reliant, not reliant on, say, the Middle East. So would banning fracking in St. Petersburg be a step toward increasing the trade deficit or making us more reliable again on other countries?
Well, if you're living next to a place that's contaminated, I don't know that you care that our trade deficit went down. You know, if you're sick, if you have cancer, I don't know that you care that the trade deficit went down. And I think it's very irresponsible to do that. And while we're talking about trade, let's talk about our number one industry. St. Petersburg will have a very different economic picture, and it will be significantly worse if we contaminate that bay. And when we're talking about having retention ponds in an area that has huge amounts of rain, tropical storms fairly regularly, hurricanes, always the potential. You never know when that's going to happen. And that's never going to have any impact on the bay, though it's perfectly safe. Come on, common sense tells you no. You contaminate that bay to a point that it's not usable, and that will destroy our economy. So I think as a St. Petersburg representative, I absolutely have an obligation to stand up for that. You know, it's, again, your kid gets cancer, but we have less oil from the Middle East. We should do both, and we can do both. We can reduce our dependence on foreign oil and not have fracking if we make a determination that we're going to do that as a society.
If I could quickly add, we're already actually on a path that I don't think people realize. Last year, 2/3 of all additional power generation came from either solar or from wind. The price of wind power in this country has dropped by 2/3 in the last 6 years, and power use has actually peaked. And so we're already on a path that most people don't see. But wind, energy efficiency, and solar are making up, a dramatic leaps in terms of energy use, and that's really where America is going, even in spite of the fossil fuel industry kicking and screaming.
This is a public education issue, and so I would like to ask the news media to make it a priority here in St. Petersburg to stay involved in educating the public on this issue, because I think it's very important, and without the public education, it's hard to get all this stuff out on Facebook and Twitter and have it make the impact that you all can make.
Sean's very good question. The wobbliness of our national economy because of the spikes or dips of one sector, natural gas, just shows that why we need to be more interdependent and more reliant on a clean energy economy, which is less volatile than our dangerous dependency on fossil fuels.
Jennifer, name and spell it please, and your title.
Sure. Jennifer, Jennifer, Rubiello, R-U, B as in boy, I-E-L-L-O, Director of Environment, Florida.
One question for any of you. Is it probably too early to know whether or not this area is a target for fracking? It's probably too early to know that, isn't it?
Well, this is how I look at it. 3 years ago, people told me, thought we were crazy to say that fracking might come to Florida. And then in December 2013, it did. Fracking occurred a little bit south of here, down in Collier County, illegally. So at the end of the day, we can't put our public health and the quality of our drinking water in the hands of the oil and gas industry. We have to make sure that we're protecting our community and our health and our environment. And so that's why we're really excited that St. Pete City Council members and the mayor are working to do just that.